are doing things like driving, right, who are taking jobs and just driving cabs within the neighborhood and doing different things of that sort. Going back to your question, your initial question that you said as far as why would some of these people pick that job and sort of veer away, it seems like, from sales or where there's unlimited potential, those types of jobs where they may have to invest a little more of themselves in a different way.
Yeah.
What would you, I think that's a good question, especially in this time.
Right.
Especially in this time. That question kind of pops out even more, I think, at this time. I think that's I mean, what is your take on that? How do you feel, you know?
Well, I think that it's just kind of a dependence on the system itself and on that type of living. And the thing is that for me, from my perspective, but I mean, I do have a very different perspective considering, you know, we're speaking right now about these issues and, you know, I have the blog up and all these different things. But either way, from my perspective, I'm seeing as if you can see in your mind's eye an ocean. And this ocean is just this is the ocean of uncertainty and demise, okay?
Right.
And right now, the United States is a raft. Or let's say it's a cookie. This ocean is an ocean of milk, and the United States is a chocolate chip cookie. And your job is to hold on to that chocolate chip cookie. The thing is that chocolate chip cookie is dissolving right now. And the system is dissolving right now. So there's very little bit cookie for you to be hanging on to.
Right.
The other option is for example, you to strengthen your legs and learn how to swim, for example.
Right.
So, I mean, if I had the choice, and again, I do have a different perspective, but again, if I have the choice, and I have either in my left hand cling to something that's dropping down, or possibly make a choice of taking a position that just takes away from what I've learned and going into a different position that's very different from what I've done my whole life, it may be, then it just seems a little bit more safe.
Right.
As counterintuitive as this may sound, it seems a little bit more safe to go into the one that does not depend on something that's obviously hurting right now.
Right. You know what? I got what you mean, but it may also be, too, that's just the nature of how the country runs. You know, it's all, like you said, more of that dependency on just the base. You know, that's usually the program of how life goes. You know, you get out of college, you do, you know. So as opposed to that, the type of thinking you're talking about is also the type of thinking that is geared towards people who, you know, have their own companies and come up with their own ideas and inventions. And that's a different type of thinking. And sometimes I feel like that's not as encouraged. You know?
So let me ask you two final questions on these same lines, because there are a couple books. For example, there's a book called The Conspiracy of the Rich by Robert Kiyosaki. Have you heard of this book?
No.
Okay. Have you heard of Robert Kiyosaki?
The name sounds familiar.
Have you heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, Robert Kiyosaki is one of my, I'm a big fan. He's one of my mentors in book form and video form. As a matter of fact, when you read the report, when you go to the Unfunded Liabilities Monster blog and you download your report and you read it, you'll find that I mention him a lot throughout the report because it plays a huge role in the way I'm seeing the world. And one of the books that he came out with recently is called The Conspiracy of the Rich. And what he does is he's a financial educator. His whole thing is, I want to teach you how to be rich and how to think like the rich do. And this book, The Conspiracy of the Rich, is all about how those who have enough money and have the positions of power to sort of design and influence the system, kind of like the lobbyist, what they're doing is they are shifting the educational system in such a way that it encourages being an employee. And the reason why they would do this is because if I'm a big business owner, then who are the drivers of my business?
Right.
my employees, right?
Right, right.
And the more entrepreneurs on the other side, the more entrepreneurs that come out, that's the more competition for my spot.
Right, right.
So this book is all about kind of what you touched on a little bit, where it may not be encouraged that much. He takes it to another level where he says this is engineered. The whole point is to make it so that when you come out of the educational system, you come out as a cog in a machine. That's the general idea, at least that's his perspective. The first of my last two questions is, to what extent do you think that this is the case, that the system itself, the educational system itself, sort of trains you and teaches you to be dependent on the system as opposed to a creator of your own systems?
Well, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, only simply because, if you deal with just the normal transition in life when it comes to education, when you're in elementary school, all the way up, when you go through the school system, the school system I don't think is necessarily designed to teach you to be your own person in that type of way. You're basically kind of trained, and I do say trained, because sometimes there's educated and then there's trained. And you are trained to conform, to conform to the norms of how things go. It's like, as if like to use from a personal example when they say, well, first you get married, then you have children. That's the conformity that you do. That's the transition, the way it's supposed to take place. I think when it comes to education, it's more of a training as to this is how we do things. This is what you do. You do this so you can get a good job, and you learn a field that you like, which part of that is the basis, which is, but then there's the part of it that, again, goes more towards the training side, where, you have the education side, but then there's a training side that's mixed in with that, and I think that part is what takes away individuality as far as creativity, as far as, okay, but you can be this, and we need people who can, that, I think that's the side that's sort of taken away, as you get older, it's taken away, you go into college. I don't think college necessarily nurtures that state of mind, and again, I don't know about other countries, but I don't think college necessarily nurtures that state of mind. So that's the thinking that you have, really. You may learn about other people who are inventors, but you don't really, and again, that's my opinion, it's just my opinion. For me, like I said, we conform to that. We get into the business, about getting into the business world, corporate, work your way up. That's the nature of what you hear is what you want to do. You want to make it so that you're making this much money and you're,
Right.
When the one thing I can say, and the only advice that I would give anyone, and it's advice that was given to me, is that the one thing I would say that I've learned is that, because again, to me, throughout this whole recession thing, one thing that's lacking is coping skills. This country doesn't nurture people with coping skills. There are generations who this is like mind-blowing again, although it's devastating to all. So no one's exempt from this. But you do have certain people who have a certain sensitivity. It's like, it's like if you're speaking on Social Security and you're talking to someone in their 30s and someone in their, 50s going into 60s. There's a different sensitivity as to how each is taking the information, how close it hits the home, so to speak.
Right.
But what I would say is during this time frame of that 2-year period, I did learn to redefine myself, the concept of just redefining myself and saying that, okay, I'm not one-dimensional. And you have to go into a creative mode. You have to say, if what you do is X, Y, Z, you have to say, but I can also do this, and I can keep yourself busy. And that's what I did. I kept myself busy. So even though it took me 2 years to get that same level position that I've been normally doing, I put my hands in a lot of baskets, so to speak, you know.
Right.
So I went into a different field. I went into a field that related to publishing, and then I went into another field that related to understanding tax investments, you know, and I freelanced, you know, I did a lot of freelance work and things like that to, again, keep myself busy, keep my mind very active, keep my mind very sharp, because you realize, like, okay, this isn't back in those days where you could get a job 1 month later, 2 months later, that this is something that goes a lot deeper. And and then what you speak on, which I'm very proud of, you know, what you speak on as far as not only understanding what's going on presently, but sort of looking at what's going on, you know, what will be happening, what's coming our way. You know what I mean? That type of forecasting based off history and based off what is going on now, and taking a real deeper look at it that so many Americans, employees, non-employees, are just so frazzled that they're not able to even see it or look at it or understand it. Many don't even want to look that way. It's too depressing. It's too, you know, but you are taking that initiative to go in that direction, you know, and I'm very proud of you. I want to say that again.
Thank you. Well, leading into my final question.